Greetings from President Barack Obama. And indeed, it is indeed thanks to President Obama that I am here today, embarking on a new career, a big change for me. Let me talk, and I would like to hear a little bit more. I want this to become a discussion, and I'd like to hear more about the student protests, because I have to admit to some curiosity about the perspective of the students here. It is a very different system than we have in the United States. But let me first tell you a little bit about myself and my background. Our approach to nominating ambassadors is a little different in the States, so I'll tell you a little bit about how I ended up here. I think you might find it interesting. First off, we did arrive about 10 weeks ago with my wife Donna and our son David. He is 15 and he has started high school in Vienna. Hopefully he will complete 4 years of high school in Vienna because we hope to be here for 4 years. And completing the 4 years may require the president to be reelected, so of course we hope that'll happen as well. I have two older sons who are both in university in the United States. My oldest is 20. He's at Brown University studying philosophy and theater. And I have an 18-year-old at Duke University in his first year studying economics and political science. So 3 boys in our household, and now we're down to 1. But we're looking forward to our sons visiting for the holidays. My professional background, I also studied political science and economics at Duke University, and then I worked on Wall Street a bit, went to Harvard Business School for my master's in business, spent 20 years in the food distribution business, and I built one of the larger independent companies in the United States. And then I became chairman of an industry cooperative, which I grew to become actually the largest of its kind in the world, with about 20 billion in revenues. And then I decided to sell my business and try something new. Sold my business, went into the investment business, did that for about 10 years. And over that time period, this previous administration, I became increasingly frustrated with the direction our country was headed, both on domestic issues and on foreign affairs. I was a Republican, and I was not happy with the direction we were headed under the Republican administration. The Republican Party had moved too far to the right for me, and I decided I have the time, I have the initiative, I'm going to get involved and do something. And the way one does this in the United States, if one wants to influence policy, is to dial for dollars. You raise money for the political candidates you like. We have limits as to what people can donate to a presidential race. I have a lot of friends who can write the maximum check, and I was willing to ask them. So I spent the year 2006 raising money for a friend of mine named Mark Warner, who was a former governor of Virginia. He was going to run for president, and a wonderful guy, a very centrist Democrat. And he decided at the end of the year not to run, after we had put together a national fundraising capacity network. And at that point, he called me and said, "Look, Bill, you can go back to anonymity," but I pulled out of the race, and Barack Obama jumped in a week later, wants to know who raised all this money for me. And I can give him your name or not, it's up to you. He said, I got a call from Hillary Clinton. Senator Clinton also wants to know who raised all this money for you. And so they both want to meet you if you want to meet them, or I can keep your name to myself and you go on back to your life. I said, give them my name. So the next thing you know, the phone rang, and it was Barack Obama on the phone. And I said, I would have to get to know you better. I'm in the process of reading your books. I find them fascinating, but I really need to know a candidate well. And he said, okay, we're going to make that happen. I also received a call from Senator Clinton's staff, and I agreed to have dinner with her. And then I went and met Barack Obama. And we went into a room, and the staff left us, and we were alone for a little over an hour. We talked about everything under the sun, and I have never in my life spent an hour with anyone more intelligent than this man. And I came home and I said to my wife, today I met our next president. At this time, this was January 2007, no one believed that Obama had a chance. Everyone thought that Senator Clinton would be the Democratic nominee. Now, I had already accepted her dinner invitation, so I went to dinner. And I came home very impressed, and I said to my wife, you know, she's very smart, very capable. If she's the nominee, she will make a wonderful president. But my heart and my head say Barack Obama would be even better, and he's the one I'm going to work for. All of my friends said I was crazy. So Hillary Clinton's going to be the nominee. Everybody knows that. I said, I don't care. I'm going to work for Obama. And so I went to work for Obama, raising money. And I also worked with the campaign as a business person. He wanted my opinion on economic issues, on business issues. I helped him with his economic campaign pledges and his economic speeches. I gave him ideas on other speeches. He's the kind of person who wants input from everyone. When we met as I was leaving, for example, in January of '07, he said, if you were me, what would you say about Iraq? Now, I'm not an expert on Iraq, but I sent him a paragraph the next day. This is what I would say if I were you. And he picked up one of my sentences and started using it. And we started an email exchange. He gave me his private email address, and we started emailing each other, and we became email buddies through the entire campaign. And he always would reply. He's a BlackBerry fanatic. He loves staying in touch. I think the hardest thing for him about the presidency is that cocoon that they put around you. It keeps him from being in touch. But we developed a close friendship, and during that process, he began to see the way my mind works, and I developed even greater respect for him as our country's potential leader, and he won. And then a phone call came when I had talked to someone on the economic team and said, look, I've enjoyed this. It's time for me to do some public service. I'd like to do that. Both of my parents served in our military, my mother in the Marines in World War II, my father in the Navy. I said, I want to do my share of public service, so this is my time. This is the president I want to work for. And I assumed I could do something to do with economics or business. And the president said, President-elect then, said, no, I have another job in mind for you. I want you to be an ambassador. Went home to my wife and I said, how do you feel about moving overseas? And she said, you know, it sounds like an adventure. I think we should do it. So we said yes, we would be happy to. The president then spent a few months working on who would go where and asked me if I would be our ambassador to Austria. And of course I was delighted. Now, why Austria? Only the president really knows, but I like to think that he read the Mercer study that said that Vienna was #1 in quality of life in the world, and decided, I'll send Bill Eacho to Vienna. So, who knows? But I'm happy to be here. I've always thought Austria to be beautiful. I've been to Austria before as a tourist. I've certainly been to Vienna a few times, and we love it. We couldn't be happier. And I think we can make a difference here. Now, as you can see, my background is not diplomacy, it's business, and I'm new to this. But I think in our case in the United States, the president likes to have in key positions people he knows that if something comes up, they will call him. And it's true. I have a terrific staff. I have a deputy who has 25 years of experience in diplomacy. But if an issue comes up that I feel needs the attention of the president, I'm going to pick up the phone and call the president. I'm not going to go through the chain of command and the bureaucracy of our State Department, because the president's my friend. And he wants to have people like that in these positions. And that's why about 1/3 of our diplomats tend to be people the president knows personally. And virtually all of Europe, we tend to put people we know that he knows personally, and in other key posts like Japan, China, etc. You know, some of the career professionals aren't always crazy about that in our foreign service, but they actually decide after a while, I think, that they like this because they like having a boss they can call the president, as opposed to go through the chain of command, because sometimes the bureaucracy can get in your way.